Hello students, nice to meet you again with one more module on Chapter 2, Sectors of Indian Economy. I am Mr. Gangadhar Naik from Indian School, Muscat. I just want to discuss some of the basic aspects of this chapter from the very beginning. If we see next slide, you have few activities which are clearly described with the help of pictures. And based on that, we will do an activity which clearly will help us to understand what are these economic activities all about, right? And how do you classify these economic activities? As you know, economic activity means those activities that takes place within a country or between countries for monetary gain, because it gives you money, and such activities are called as economic activities. And if you see that next slide, you have many activities taking place in the world or in our country, and that are grouped together into various sections, and that sections can be discussed with the help of the picture, with the help of the diagram, okay, which you would be seeing it in the next slide. And as I said earlier, economic activities are meant for earning money. And in this world, in this country, people are engaged in various activities. Even if you look at this picture, you understand people are engaged in different activities. If you look at the right side, there is a postman who is distributing letters. You can see a shop, left side, and there is a farmer who is busy with agricultural activities. There is a headload worker there, and there is a construction site where men and women work shoulder to carry out various economic activities. And all these activities are meant for earning something. It is a source of livelihood, and such activities are called as economic activities. And based on these understandings, let's do an activity, because that will help you to know how do you categorize all these activities into various groups of sections. That's what the most important thing we need to understand in this chapter first before we continue with any other topics. So let's go for that activity in the next slide. So the activity is very simple. We have few items listed as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we need to group. When you group on what ground, you can see there are some few columns there, on what ground you classify. And finally then how do you group them into different 3 categories. And it is very clear for us, items like flower cultivator or fishermen, they can be grouped as 1. Then number 6, item number 6, match factory, can be grouped as one more group, one more item on some, because we did it based on some ground. As you know, okay, a flower cultivator or fisherman may be linked to nature. Match factory, maybe he is involved in some sort of processing. He is converting some inputs of agricultural activities into a finished product. So there is a process involved. Match factory can be in one group. And there are some items like item number 3, priest, item number 4, money lender, and item number 5, call center, service providers. They can be into one group because they don't give us any product by and large. Instead, they give us service. We need the service of all these people. So this is how one grouping you did, all the 6 items. Then what can be done? All these items finally, of course, can be categorized into 3. Item number 1 and 2 can be called as primary because they are linked to nature. And when you say item number 6, they are processing, it can be called as the secondary. And when you say 3, 4 and 6, that is a priest, money lender, call center employee, they are giving his service, they can be classified as a tertiary. So this is one way of classifying economic activities. because I said economic activities means earning money, and all these six items are meant for earning money, but all can be grouped into three category. They category number one primary, category number two secondary, category number three tertiary. This classification is mainly based on nature of work. There are other way of classifying economic activities, like you can call it as a private and public sector or joint sector. That will be discussed later. Sometime all these activities, some are well organized, some are not organized. In some activities people get better paid, in some activities people are not paid well, they are having what is called desperate life in some of the activities, and you can group as organized and unorganized. So organized, unorganized we can study later. Public, private, joint sector we will also study later. For the timing, our attention is only on primary, secondary and tertiary. This is how economic activities can be grouped. One way of classifying economic activities, and the base is nature of activity, because primary linked to nature, secondary is processing, services, or tertiary is giving you service. Is that clear? And based on this, let's go for more understanding of what are these categories all about. That is primary, secondary, tertiary. So based on our activity, I think it would be very easy for us to know the concept and differences between primary, secondary and tertiary sectors. When you talk about primary, it is actually those economic activities undertaken by directly using natural resources. That means we produce goods by exploiting natural resources. We have many examples. We have been studying this, like fishing, dairy farming, agriculture, mining, because these activities are linked to nature. And when you shift to secondary activity, there is a transforming process involved. Activity that transform natural products into a finished product. Okay, and those finished products are not directly consumed by human beings. All the products of secondary activities are not consumed directly by the human beings. Some are consumed directly, some are not. For example, sugar. Sugar from sugar industries we consume directly. But there are some products, take an example, iron and steel industry. Its products we may not use directly, that are used by other industries to process. Then of course we use those final products, right? So anyway, secondary activity linked to the nature, but they are involved in the process. There is a transformation process involved in that. So all the industries can be grouped as a secondary sector. Then to continue and to carry out these primary activities, or even to that of secondary activities, we always need the service. Take an example, we need loan to conduct your agricultural or secondary activities, so that can be provided by banks. And whatever products you produce in primary or secondary, sometimes we need storage facility. You also need communication facilities. So these are all coming under tertiary sector. Banking, storage, communication, plenty of examples you take, because they don't produce any goods. They give you service. They generate service. They help in the progress or development of primary or secondary sector. They're actually helping hand to these activities. So tertiary sector, sometimes we also call it as a service sector, because they provide you service. So this is what we need to understand when you talk about first way of classifying economic activity based on nature of work. The primary, involved in nature, linked to the nature; secondary, involved in the transformation process; and tertiary sector, involved in giving you service to carry out all economic activities in the country or in this world. And with this classification, clear understanding of the meaning of each term, please look at the next slide clearly and the differences between primary, secondary and tertiary. Right? After knowing the differences between primary, secondary and tertiary, now let's engage in an activity. I have given you 4 items here. Item number 1, workers need vegetables and milk. Strike by transporters and lorries. 3, farmers will not be able to sell products. 4, workers in industries. When you complete this activity, you will be in a position to understand the term and concept. Let's take how this activity can be solved. Let's take item number 4, workers in industries. I have just written here, left side, workers in industry as 4. Now, in the second box there, it is written as item number 1, that is workers, they need vegetables and milk. And you need vegetables and milk as an industrial worker, so the one sector needs some of the products. And from where do you get these vegetables and milks? If you see item number 3, rural area, right? Because they produce these things. That is item number 3. But they will not be able to sell the product because their products will not reach to the industry. Their products will not reach to the workers. Why? Because there is somebody is disturbing in between industrial workers and the rural primary workers. What is that item that is disturbing? Item number 2. What is that? Strike by the transporters. Right? So, as these transport or lorries who are involved in these transportation activity, they are involved, now they are on strike. That means the products of rural area now will not reach to the urban area. Right? So, based on these, it is clearly understood for us, when you say industrial workers, you can call them as secondary altogether. When you say rural primary who produce vegetable, you can call them as a primary sector. And who is now disturbing through protests, especially lorry or transportation, you know they are coming under tertiary sector. So, tertiary sectors strike is disturbing other 2 sectors. Because of the strike now, primary activities are blocked and industrial activities are not getting enough support from the primary or rural area. And this clearly tells us and informs us that if anything goes wrong in one sector, will disturb other 2 sectors. So, when tertiary sector going on hartal or strike, activities in primary or secondary gets disturbed. It can happen in any parts of the world, and it shows all sectors are interdependent. You cannot have one activity without the support of other activities. All are interdependent. Is that clear? With this classification, with this understanding of how all economic activities, that is primary, secondary, tertiary, how are they interdependent, let's see the next issue. What is the role of these activities in the country? How do they help for the country's development? Right? Let's listen to those aspects. So, all these primary, secondary, tertiary activities we do in any countries of the world, it is mainly meant for our country's progress. Our country's progress can be expressed in different ways. Take an example, I can say higher GDP means your country is progressing. As developed countries, they have better GDP. When you have very less GDP, you can call your country is not developing or underdeveloping or underdeveloped country, right? So, primary, secondary, tertiary sectors finally meant for country's development. Some may produce goods, some may provide you service, but finally they are all meant for finally it helps for the country's development in the form of GDP. Now, if you take in India's example, roughly if you say India's GDP is $3 trillion US. So, $3 trillion US means that is the final value of all the goods and service you produce from all the 3 sectors. I am not going to classify here who is contributing more, is it primary or is it secondary or is it tertiary. Even here I have just given an example. It is a tertiary and secondary sectors contributing more for GDP than that of primary sector. So the important concept is what is GDP. As I have given an example, 3 trillion US dollar, that is India's GDP, that means it is the final value of all the activities you do in a country through all these primary, secondary, tertiary sectors. And in the next slide I have taken two cases. One is a biscuit example and second one is a wheat example, just to tell you what is this final value all about. Okay, so let's see that case number one, example number one of the biscuit. So in this first case, first example of biscuit, you see I have written rupees 60, that is the final product, biscuit packet. One packet, let's take 60 rupees. And that is the value, final value. And in the process of getting this final product, we do take some inputs. We will be using nuts, we will be using milk, we will be using wheat flour, we will be using oil, for example, or any other essence which we need to produce final product. Right? So for us, when you calculate GDP, that final 60 rupees enough for us. That is the final value. We will not take the value of nuts or milk or wheat or sugar. Why? Because final value includes already the value of all these inputs or raw materials you call. So this is one example to tell you what is final goods all about or final value all about. So final goods and the final value. Final good is the finished goods sold in the market, and its value will be calculated, and it is a huge task. From all the states we have to get the report, and all the state government need to submit the report to the central government. It is a mammoth task done by the central government to calculate finally what is the value of primary, secondary and tertiary sector. This example I have just taken just to prove you what is the final value of final goods. That is very important, because when you say final goods, you don't take the value of again inputs, because final value itself has the value of inputs. Okay, there is another term for inputs. I will tell you a little later after taking one more example of what is called the wheat example. Let's take the wheat example in the next slide. Taking one more example to prove the final value. Take an example in your country. We produce 10,000 kgs of wheat and we sold in the market, final product. Then we are selling this wheat, whatever we produced, at rupees 8 per kg. So the final value of wheat will be 8,000 rupees. Right? So that is how you can take, for example, from primary sector, one example I have taken. Right? So based on these two cases of biscuit and wheat, I have just taken two examples just to convince you what is called final value. Right? In the case of biscuit, we use so many inputs. Right? In the case of wheat also, we will be using so many inputs like fertilizer, pesticides. So the final value wheat. So in the second example, so when you take up the final value wheat, its price is 80,000 rupees. Then again I need not add the value of fertilizer and pesticides, because final value 8 rupees per kg already includes all other inputs. Same way we took the example of biscuit also. Biscuit also we are using so many inputs, and final value of course 60 rupees per packet, that is the final product and final value also. That already includes the value of all the inputs. So please remember, when you calculate GDP like this, it's a huge task as I said, you take only the final value. All those value of inputs are already included in the final value. And those inputs we call as intermediate goods. That means those goods which are used to produce your final product, they are called as intermediate goods. I think I made it very clear with the help of these two examples There is also an example given in your textbook, biscuit example given in your textbook. What is GDP? GDP stands for final value only of goods or service produced in 3 sectors. Is it clear? With this clarification, you please check next slide for 1 or 2 questions, work out it, and if you have any doubts, please clarify with me, right? After knowing what is GDP, what is primary, what is secondary, what is tertiary, let's do an activity again. I have 4 items here in the left side, 4 boxes, and numbered as 1, 2, 3 and 4. And the activity is you have to arrange these boxes in an order. And once you read all these items, box number 1, box number 2 and box number 3 and 4, you will be getting an answer like this. That is, first position will go to group number 2, primarily agriculture. That is a country primarily agricultural. But that country will progress in the field of farming methodology. So that occupies the first position. Then comes box number 4. As the farming method improves in any country, many people start taking up other activities also along with the primary. But primary is the main. Along with the primary main activity, people also engage in other activities like trading or craft works. So that occupies group number 4 item occupies second position. After that, group box number 1 occupies the third position. As the country progresses in farming, people start move to the secondary sectors called industries. So that is the rank number 3, place number 3, that is a box number 1. And the last position goes to box number 3. As now people further began to move to other activities where they don't produce goods but they provide you services. So the box number 2 and 4 can be called as primary. Group box number 1 comes under secondary. Box number 3 comes under service or tertiary sector. So what do you understand from this activity is that any country initially stresses and begins its progress stressing on primary activity. And as they improve in their technology, methods of farming, people slowly country moves towards secondary sector. It doesn't mean that primary sector is neglected. People are working in primary, but some people move to secondary, industry progresses. As these 2 sectors progress, the tertiary sector also flourishes. So if you see any countries of the world which are called today as developed country, they have progressed like this. Initially primary, then shifted to secondary, and now they are stressing more on tertiary. Doesn't mean they are not having enough food to eat. They are self-sufficient in primary sectors, but they are moving towards any country. India too did the same thing. We also progressed from primary and slowly, gradually progressed to secondary, now stressing more on tertiary. At the same time, please remember we are self-sufficient in food products or food products production, right? This is called the shift in sectors. So any country progress from primary to that of other sectors. And over the last 100 years, if you see any countries of the world, including India, this is the trend. Shifting from primary to secondary, then to secondary to the tertiary. Is that clear? This is what the shift or change took place in all major 3 sectors or economic activities of a country, right? As discussed earlier, students, Most of the countries have progressed from primary to secondary. Same case is that of India too. If you look at this graph, it tells us clearly how we progressed from primary to tertiary sector or to other sectors. If we see the graph 1973-74, I think it was primary sector which played major role. But by 2013 or 14, it is tertiary sector gaining popularity. Even if we see the few questions there, it is clearly understood that from primary we have progressed to tertiary sector, and secondary sector also started progressing. Out of total GDP, whatever you call as total 56 lakh crore, and today's GDP is more than 150 lakh crores. You know it. So that's how the progress of India all about. And definitely a question that comes to our mind, what made us to see this rapid progress of tertiary sector? I'm not stressing now on secondary sector, we'll do it later. We just want to stress on why this tertiary sector is gaining popularity. What are those factors? So let's look at those things. I need to clarify those issues because that is an interesting aspect to know. What made the sector which has grown much over the last 40 years, there is a tertiary sector, so we need to know the reasons for that, right? So let's see those issues one by one. So when you hear about the rising importance of tertiary sector, we get the question, why is tertiary sector growing? The question is it because government has to provide basic services like hospitals, education, police, courts? Is it because of that? Or we get the question, is it because of the development of agriculture and industry? Because we studied they are linked, all three sectors are linked. Is it because of that? Or is it because of increase in income which the people earn? Because as the income increases, people can spend more on various purposes, for various purposes. Or is it because of the development of information and communication technology? So these questions arises in my mind or in your mind too. Or is it because of all the above factors? And the answer is very simple. It is not because of one or two. It is because of all the factors, like government is increasing its expenditure on various services, is because of increase in agriculture and industrial activities, it is because of the increase in our income, and it is also because of new services that is coming in our country or in this world. Because of all these factors, today service sector is gaining its popularity, and that's how it contributes to the GDP of our country in a larger scale. Is it clear? And if you see the next slide, we have just summarized it. Just go through that points, and let's see the last important topic of today's module, right? So please go through these points, why tertiary sector has grown so much in the last 40 years in our country. When we say in a country like India, service sector is growing so much in the last 40 years, it doesn't mean that all of the service sector is growing equally well. They are not in the equal food. Okay? There are some service sectors or there are some economic activity that come under service sector or tertiary sector. They grow at the rapid pace. And people who are working in such sectors will grow more. They will have more income. Their standard of living will improve. And such group can be called as skilled people or skilled service sector. And there are some economic activities in the service sector who provide service, but they don't grow like the skilled group. They appear as working more, but they don't have better salary, they don't get better payment, they don't get all the facilities like the skilled people. And that group can be called as a unskilled service sector, right? So don't think when I say service sector growing, it is contributing more to the GDP. It doesn't mean that all people who are engaged in service sector are growing equally well. There are people who are growing well, there are people who are not. But all comes under service sector. So service sector can be further classified as skilled and unskilled. Is that clear, children? So with this clarification, let's stop today's discussion. We will come up with more modules talking about so many other aspects of this chapter. So till there, goodbye. Study well all the topics which we discussed in this module. Read your textbook clearly, understand the topic very clearly. Alright, so thank you. All the best.